To all of my fans out there, welcome back to the stream. And so this is Intelligent Cycle. So I'm going to be talking about why the Denver Nuggets fired coach Mike Malone and the GM Calvin Booth after seasons of long rift. So inside the paranoid culture within the Nuggets organization that pushed Josh Kroenke to fire coach Mike Malone and general manager Calvin Booth with 3 games left in the regular season. As you can see, there's 2 guys right there. Calvin Booth made a timely entrance, lugging a massive frame at his side. He crossed the Nuggets' mostly empty practice gym, passing a gaggle of reporters, and on his way to present the 10-year coach Mike Malone with a gift. It was January 6th at the Ball Arena. Malone and team president Josh Kroenke were having a chat on the far sideline when Booth reacted to them. He revealed that it was inside a custom jersey on a velvet mat that commemorated Malone's recent milestone, 400 Malone's 433rd regular season win with the Denver 6 weeks earlier had made him the winningest coach in franchise history, and the jersey number was 433. Malone admired the new office decor, then dapped up Booth, and I guess I had to get another one made when I'm done, he told the reporters. That says like 1,273. By then, perhaps the worst kept secret in ball arena around the NBA was any such display of togetherness and public consumption between Malone and Booth was merely that, a facade. The Denver Post spoke to multiple sources connected to the Nuggets for this report to understand the tensions between a difficult season for one of Denver's key sports franchises, and almost all of them spoke under the condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the topic and their ongoing relationships with the team. Behind the scenes, the sources told the Post that the head coach and general manager seldom engaged with each other outside the occasional meetings with Kroenke, and unwilling and immediate read their frayed relationship, who's also happened to be their boss. Meanwhile, factions had quietly formed within the organization with the coaching staff and front office, feeling obligated to take sides, and this divided culture and smoldered and stretched into the locker room until April the 8th, when the Kroenke family dropped the bombshell by firing Malone and Booth with 3 games left in the tumultuous regular season, still likely to result in a playoff berth. And it was a radical play for a all small market franchise that won its first championship less than 2 years earlier under the stewardship of Malone and Booth. This was an us versus them type of thing, one team source said, and us versus them is like the worst mentality you can have, and it certainly became that way. We weren't having fun. On March 14th, the Nuggets and Avalanche owner Stan Kroenke, father of Josh, watched his NBA team host the LA Lakers from an unusual vantage point, wearing a brown button-up jacket, and ventured out of the owner's suite and downstairs to survey a game from the end of the bench. And there were a few components to the eventual season decision to fire Malone. The Kroenkes made a point to closely observe basketball operations in recent weeks, essentially auditioning the state of the team and the results of base business that forgets victory faster than defeat. The Nuggets weren't playing up to standard, and in particular, their defensive regression from 8th to 21st this season indicated a more troubling theme. The fly-around mentality required to execute both their base coverage behind the initial pass would show that it's quarter at a time, but never a full game. On some nights, Nikola Jokic seemed uncommitted to his role at the level of the screen, rotations, and closeouts often appeared apathetic or simply non-existent. Malone runs hot and doesn't hide it, and he publicly and privately took his team to ask for poor defensive effort on several occasions throughout the season. But the players grew tired of that explosive coaching style, finding his outbursts a stale method of getting through to them. And according to multiple sources familiar with their thinking, Malone's intensity had the wrong effect on a large portion of the locker room. Yelling doesn't resonate. Jokic was aware of the increasing frustration and harbored some of his own. And tonight, Stan Kroenke watched from the end of the bench. Denver needed an 8-0 run in the last 50 seconds to beat the Lakers, even when superstars Luka Doncic and LeBron James sitting down. Malone entered his post-game news conference minutes later, crumpled up a copy of the box score, and discarded it in the nearest trash can. The Nuggets lost the next night to the Washington Wizards, who had the worst record in the league. Malone seemed to realize his players were tuning him out, but his own exasperation peaked on March 21st after a loss to the Portland Trailblazers, and it was not my job to evaluate how to take things, and it's my job to be honest and sometimes brutally honest, he said, calling out players for not studying film. Tonight, this was a brutally honest message. The guys are full of crap. You won't hear it, and they'll say the coach is tripping. The Kroenkes were also aware that Jokic was losing patience with the general direction of the season, which has sputtered in contrast to his magnificent individual year. They have been concerning examples of Jokic's angst, such as last Friday at Golden State, when the MVP center was seen on the bench gesturing wildly and vociferating Denver's poor play. And it was the third loss of the four-game streak that accelerated Josh Kroenke's urge to make a change. And he and his father had already decided to move on from Malone and Booth after the season, and by cutting ties with 3 games left to salvage the vibe, they could also leave time for the Nuggets-led assistant David Adelman to show off his coaching chops. Adelman interviewed with the Hornets, Cavaliers, and Lakers last offseason, sources told the Post, and he's widely expected to receive interest from teams with openings again this year. Josh Kroenke notified Jokic of the changes first. Team sources insist that Jokic isn't the type of superstar to make personal demands, and he wasn't behind the decision to fire Malone and Booth, but ownership is mindful of his perspective nonetheless. Jokic said it best himself on Wednesday night in Sacramento. I listened and I accepted. Then Kroenke addressed the shocking move in meetings with players and the team staff. And it's a crazy day. None of us expected it. Michael Porter Jr. said Wednesday night, none of us really know how to handle something like that. And I think Josh was amazing. And as the leader of the organization, he said that he saw that we weren't having fun. And he saw where we weren't playing as hard as we could. He said he wanted to come here and reestablish that as the basis of our culture, Booth and Malone, and a lack of trust. And the rift between Malone and Booth wasn't necessarily characterized by explosive confrontations. Two of them complained behind each other's backs, according to team and league sources, which established a paranoid environment at Ball Arena. And it was contentious, one source said. Things could have been done. Things could have been fixed a lot earlier. It was awful. Philosophical differences between them dated back to Booth's first days as the front office top decision maker in 2022. When was the president of basketball operations, Tim Connolly, left Denver for the same job in Minnesota. Connolly and Malone got along and worked well together, and Booth was more independently mixed and reluctant to collaborate with Malone on roster moves, but made it easy to change. The Nuggets made their NBA championship run in Booth's first year at the helm, and aided by his additions to the roster such as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Bruce Brown, and Christian Brown. And after the title, His draft and develop ideology took center stage, and he gave guaranteed rookie contracts to second round picks Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson. He signed Zeke Najee to the number 22 pick in 2020, a 4 year, $32 million extension. Though Najee has started only 7 games in his first 3 seasons, whether they wanted it or not, Najee and Pickett became key characters in the deteriorating relationship between their coach and GM. Booth preached the importance of positional size and wanted Najee playing at the four, sources said, and Malone emphasized positional versatility, instead often using Najee as a backup center. I think that is a bunch of malarkey. Are you a 4 or a 5? Malone said this season, in today's NBA, you're a big, you're a small. This is not the 1980s where it's threes and out, twos in. Zeke's a big. Najee appeared in Malone's rotation as a power forward in a handful of successful games leading up to the trade deadline this February, while Denver was looking to use a salary in a trade, and after no such deal materialized, Booth told reporters, Zeke was obviously has shown recently something that I've known for a while, and he probably should have just been at best at the four. Pickett was the 32nd overall pick out of Penn State, Booth's alma mater, during his rookie season. Starting point guard Jamal Murray missed 23 games, but Malone often played playoff ineligible Colin Gillespie instead of Pickett on the depth chart. All other times, he used other bench lineups without a point guard. These are fairly normal disputes for a coach and executive to encounter. When differentiated Denver's situation was a lack of trust and either operating in good faith, and accusations of ego and malice festered behind the scenes. Booth believed Malone was holding back Pickett and using Najee out of the position to spite Booth. League sources said Malone believed Booth made roster moves to force him into playing Booth's unseasoned draft picks. And when Booth hired Mike Penberthy to join the organization as a shooting coach, Malone saw it as an attempt to overextend into his territory, a league source said. And Penberthy operated separately from the coaching staff. Najee and Pickett worked out with him in Los Angeles last August instead of training at the team's facility in Denver. Another point of contention. Booth was livid at Malone for not playing second-year wing Peyton Watson in Game 7 against the Timberwolves last season when the Nuggets blew a 20-point lead in a stunning season, and the law sources said subsequently Malone wanted Watson to play in Denver's summer league team going into his third season, but accentuating a massive disconnect in their evaluations of young players. Malone grew increasingly frustrated with the roster's construction after the Nuggets forsook their right to match contract offers for Caldwell Pope. Sources said the veteran guard ultimately signed the Orlando Magic for 3 years and $66 million. Booth believed the sacrifice of KCP and other more significant pivots could be necessary to win a second championship. He even explored trades involving Jamal Murray last offseason and Porter during this season, league sources told the Post. But the Nuggets have only made marginal moves since the departure of KCP, including a $10.6 million signing of Dario Saric that has failed spectacularly. And at this season stalled, the pertinent question started to become when the Kroenkes might choose to keep between Malone and Booth. The general manager's decision-making anatomy started to dwindle after he sought the more money in a contract extension, and the Kroenkes took their offer to the table, according to sources, and ownership decided well before the deadline that Porter was not to be traded. Meanwhile, Malone had 2 years left on his contract and would be owed more than $20 million if fired. And in the end, Josh Kroenke preferred not to take a side. Fed up with the lack of alignment, he wiped the slate clean. And I'm not about to sit here and say that it was because Coach Malone wasn't a vibe, vibe wasn't right. It was top to bottom. Porter said, and all the way down to the new guys. We weren't playing how we were supposed to play, and we weren't picking each other up how we were supposed to pick each other up. And it wasn't just one guy. It wasn't Calvin or Coach Malone. It was top to bottom. And Adelman shared a similar sentiment when he addressed this dysfunction before his default as the interim head coach, saying that everyone in the building was at fault. He also made the point to credit Malone and Boo for their contributions to the franchise, but previously didn't know what it felt to win a championship. For Malone and Adelman didn't want an awkward ending to eclipse a hell of a run. Malone didn't just win in Denver, he endeared himself to the fan base and the city with the same personality that ultimately jeopardized his own job security. Best coach in Nuggets history, Adelman said, can't argue it. Statistically, he's right. Even if Malone didn't fulfill his proclamation in January, the coach from Queens and raised a family in Denver and always had his dreams of leading the Nuggets as long as he could. Maybe 1,273 was an arbitrary number to wins to throw out the half jokingly, but he couldn't have predicted this historic run would end just 3 months later. And fair or not, it stopped at 471. All right, so that is the article coming from the Denver Post of what I read about why Calvin Booth, GM, and Coach Mike Malone were both fired by Josh and his father and the Kroenke family. So here's my thoughts about this whole thing going out. So I kind of was saying they hadn't really been talking to each other, communicate with each other for about like the last 3 weeks of the season. And also, I've heard a lot of things that the overall lack of trust, the players not having the right chemistry, him not getting the same, respect from the guys in the locker room. And once you lose the locker room as a head coach, the guys, you kind of with this hard mentality, harsh kind of calling each other out kind of mentality, harsh mentality, but suggesting the guys and the players are not watching the kind of film, not knowing when to take the losses, on the chin and really in the games, especially against the Lakers and especially against the other Western Conference opponents in this up and coming, in this ongoing season. And the last off season with the loss to the Timberwolves, not playing Peyton Watson, which that was a big problem, and of course roster kind of differentiates, not using Jalen Pickett nor Zeke Najee enough in the playoffs last year, nor in the prior few seasons. Even despite y'all winning the championship, you didn't use them as much as they should. Not the effort of going after and continuing to match in a contract offer for KCP, for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That was kind of another thing as well. Losing the kind of roster and losing the locker room for the coach, for the Nuggets players, losing that kind of side is what kind of did Coach Mike Malone, and also what did Calvin Booth in as well. Now, a lot of people was gonna ask this question like, if was Jokic involved? Did Jokic knew about the coaching staff, and excuse me, the front office making a decision to let Mike Malone go? Like, no, that I think is, and then they'll probably ask the question also: is is Nikola Jokic a coach killer? Like, oh, is he a coach killer? Like, was he one of the causes for that? That question should not be opposed to him because he was not, he did not have a say so or even have an involvement in the decision whatsoever. This was a combination of everything that happened throughout the whole entire regular season for me. And it kind of just dispels overall, like, where I think fans and I think people on the NBA side, and I think people who are like just commentators of sports should not be speaking on topics if they don't know a lot about what they're talking about overall and as a feeling. And to me, when you start making up claims and start making up speculations, making up allegations about why certain people and certain teams is gone, it kind of just goes to spell you how you don't know what's going on, what's happening behind the scenes. So yeah, there was a combination of everything with the disagreement between not playing the younger players and still going with the veterans from what Calvin Booth and Coach Mike Malone had disagreements of, and then of course not willing to give your starters a little bit of a break, a little bit of a rest, and then getting themselves energized and remotivated, getting back on the floor last year in the loss in the conference semifinals if you're the for the Denver Nuggets, like that was another thing that kind of really just hurt them, through the long run. And to me, also the the Nuggets just wasn't on the same. It's not been on the same page all year. Losing guys in free agency and losing guys in the offseason also really hurt them as well. Uh, the overall like the when you lose the locker room as a head coach and when you lose the locker room as a GM, you kind of just pretty much lost the team overall because there's no way of salvaging it. And the back and forth uh, disagreement, the back and forth, exchange at one point, and then after that, just not speaking to each other was kind of like the thing where the 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 front office was like, man, we're just tired of this mess. We're tired of just not guys not listening to each other. I don't pay you guys to not talk to each other, to have a little bit of a conversation, to have a conversation with the players, have some sort of like acknowledgement of respect for the players, you know, uh, towards the end of the year. And for me, in my opinion alone, I just think that you got to have some sort of closure. You got to have a mental state of clarity. And these players are not gonna go with this old school 1980s, late early 1990s mentality. You got to really, you know, you gotta that hardball kind of coaching mentality is not gonna be so potent with these players because these players is very heightened and very sensitive, including Jokic. Including Jokic. These guys are high level of sensitivity, high level of arrogance, high level of just, you know, I feel like I can just do these. I can just do this. I can just play the way I play the style of gameplay on the court that I want to play, and that just goes to show you. And then also, you not really going back in the locker room and telling the players and showing the players film. Not they need to have more like technology if they want to have it. Have more like technology like they do in the NFL. Have more technology on the sidelines like tablets or like iPads or tablets or iPads or iPhones or something like on the sidelines after the plays is gone. Once you go into a timeout, to go in and really show these guys what assignments that you're blowing. Don't just get the playbook. Don't just get the overall board, like the clipboard, or even not the clipboard, but the overall but the whiteboard and break down plays. They need to have more technology involved if they're so advanced and show these guys what they're missing, what assignments that they're missing, what assignments that they're blowing, out there, what defense assignments and rotation shits that they're blowing because they're not going to know these things or they're not going to understand what of not knowing these things if they don't really know where they're going with it. And that just is a thing, in my opinion, that gets lost. And also, you're already in the number 4 seed in the Western Conference. It's not like you're falling out of the conference, out of the Western Conference in general, and falling out of the playoffs. So understand that you lost the team and you lost the locker room, and I get that the players did not really care that much for the way his coaching pedigree, his style and mentality was. But you just gotta have some sort of some sort of foreclosure. You gotta have some sort of thick skin, and a lot of players today just don't have that thick skin to me. And that's where it gets ultimately just lost in transaction and lost in translation. So I want to know from anybody in the comment section um, the reason why you think that the Nuggets let go of Coach Mike Malone and GM Calvin Booth. What was your guys' thoughts about this whole situation, your reasons and everything, and let me know what you guys think about that down in the comment section. And again, for me, if they got that, I think because of the coaching replacement that they had. Let me see. All right, like I went up too far. So yeah, they about to hire. So they got the assistant coach David Adelman. I didn't know nothing much about this guy, and him interviewing with the Lakers, Cavaliers, and Hornets. So I didn't know anything about this guy and the and or what he did the past or what they was interviewing for the other coach, other positions for other teams for a coaching spot last offseason. I didn't know anything about this guy. So hopefully, what he does is gonna bring some different style and inspiration to the team, and bring some leadership mentality to the galvanize the players and galvanize the assistant coaches as well, and the leadership mentality to the team, and bring something new and a different flavor to the culture. Bring some new and different flavor to the Nuggets front office and to the overall to the culture. So we'll see how that goes, in my opinion, and which goes to show you that it's a lot of growing pains. It's a lot of growing pains for the next off season. There's a lot of growing to do, and a lot of overall changing of the vanguard to see what could be the ultimate driving force to put this team, to be as successful as they could be, moving forward. And this is a move for the up and coming stretch of the all season for them to go back to the NBA Finals to get to a championship and to win another championship under this new coaching regime. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how them performance to do in this playoffs. But because they play the Clippers in the first round, so we'll see how that goes for them. But yeah, those is my thoughts on the Nuggets and the firing of both of those guys. So tell me what you guys think about it in the comment section down below. I will do a preview of the NBA playoffs, and it was one thing I forgot to do was the March Madness recap from the championship game between Florida and Houston, and my Final Four recap. So yeah, I forgot to do that video a while back. So I'll do that. Also, do a live stream on that as well. And then after that, I'll do my NBA playoffs preview. And also got some more. Got a movie review coming as well today. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you guys who all was watching. Thank you guys for all that was watching, and thanks for all the support. Like, share, and most of all, subscribe. And I will talk to you guys in the next one.